I'm the founder and CEO of Transformed. So we started the business in 2004, and what we were being asked by a number of different clients to develop training and basically upskill people in a number of different fields. Over the years, we've developed training and qualifications in a range of different industries, and the one that's kind of been the standout for us is the Thermal Performance Assessor or Home Energy and Sustainability Assessor field.
Yep. So that's the Certificate for in Home Energy Efficient and Sustainability, known as HEES, H-E-E-S.
Yep. That's right,
program.
So it was first introduced in 2012, and the qualification back then was basically a change in the industry, and so up until that point there'd been fairly minor training provided for people that did thermal performance assessments, and then it changed to a Certificate 4 in 2012, and here we are now in 2025, and there's been an update to that a few years ago, but basically it's a Certificate 4 required if you want to work in that field.
And how long have you guys been running that course for now?
Basically, we started when the Certificate 4 first commenced in 2012, so what's that, 11 years now?
Time.
And we were engaged by the federal government, the Department of Climate Change, as it was at the time, to develop the training and assessment materials for industry for that qualification. So we kind of started way back then, and we've been working with the federal government body. It's changed its name a few times along the way, but we've been working with them since that time, and to train people and develop materials in all the various iterations that have gone through, including more recently the introduction of NCC 2022 and the whole of home component, and we're now working with them on the NATAs for existing homes, which will be launching in various states and territories over the coming years.
Okay, great. Sounds like you've been doing this course since the beginning of time. You must be one of the market leaders in this.
Yeah, pretty much. We like to think of ourselves as one of the market leaders, definitely. And I guess the difference here is that we're sort of in the trenches, not only delivering training and assessment, but we're working with regulatory bodies, with the accreditation bodies on new schemes. We're working on auditing of industry. We're assisting and providing input into the policy that shapes the industry. So it's not just like some training providers that they go, oh yeah, we want to run training in that, and they get some people that might know a little bit about that, and then they kind of start doing it. We're right at the forefront, right at the pointy end with a lot of the policy as well as the implementation as well.
Wow, okay, good, great. So that means the students who actually go through you guys and learn all that, they will get the latest knowledge, all the latest changes and everything that's happening in the course or in the industry as well, not just
and so what we do is, obviously the qualification requires us to cover a certain range of things, but certainly what we do is we provide additional information and material around some of those other changes that are coming along. Obviously some of those things are launched and released at points in time, but for example when the T2022 came out and there was a move to include a new performance requirement, the required assessment of appliances and so on, also known as the whole of home scheme, we were engaged to develop webinars and train industry in that particular space, and so that then gets folded into the Certificate 4 course. And so as those things develop, we fold that into the course as well.
Oh, great, excellent. Now, what with this course, what are some of the job outcomes or possibilities can someone become after completing the course?
Yes, under the National Construction Code or Building Code, when there's a new home that's been basically designed and planned, it needs to be assessed for thermal performance. And so a NATA's assessor or thermal performance assessor is the professional that does that assessment work, and they then provide a certificate basically back to the designer, and that then goes to the council as part of the building approval process. So every building needs to meet certain requirements under the energy efficiency requirements under the building codes. And whilst the requirements in each state differ slightly, in New South Wales, for example, it's done under the BASIX scheme. What we find is that every state is required to meet energy efficiency or thermal performance requirements, and a lot of that comes back to the assessment at the time of design. And so those requirements are becoming increasingly more stringent. Under the old NCC 2019, it was a 5-star requirement. That's been progressively increased to 6 stars in 2019, and then more recently it's increasing again. And so what it means is that assessors are required to assess the buildings, and then they provide any guidance and advice to designers to be able to comply with the requirements that that's outlined in the building codes. So that's kind of been the case for best part of 25 years. So anyone who's built a new home, you may not necessarily be involved in that, but that's something that's been happening. What's really exciting though is that there's been the enhancement or development of that scheme for existing homes. And so the scheme itself has been expanded, and whilst each state and territory will adopt the scheme at different points in time, what will happen is that there'll be an assessment of existing homes, and it's likely to occur at the point of sale. And so, like in the case prior to selling a house, you need to get an energy assessment done on the home, and then you get a certificate. The same thing is likely to apply in other states. We're also seeing some early work being done by valuers and banks, and they are incredibly interested in this, because if banks can see that properties have greater or better thermal performance, use less energy, what they're also offering is incentives for lower interest rates and green loans and other things as well. There's about 15.8 million existing homes in Australia, be it apartments, be it freestanding homes, all of those things. And as these schemes start to roll out, what we'll see is that there'll be a new market emerging, a new work emerging for assessors to assess some of those 15.8 million homes.
Wow, so that's pretty much, you're talking about not just for new homes that's getting built or new apartments getting built, but you're also talking about when you sell a property, then you need to go through this assessment. So basically it's like a building and pest that most people pretty much do in every single purchase.
Well, correct. And so the system's been in place in the ACT for about 25 years. And there's been the scorecard system that developed out of Victoria. That's been around for a little while. It's been optional and so on. And so obviously for these schemes, the state governments need to introduce the scheme, and then they'll have an implementation time frame around the time frames of those things. But certainly what's happened already is that all the state and territory building ministers have agreed, and they're all on board with this NATHERS for existing home scheme. And as I say, the scheme at the moment is currently going through a kind of trial process or a pilot process. We're yet to see the exact timings for each state and territory. But what that means for assessors, and what that means for people who are interested in changing careers, is that there's a significant new industry that will grow and develop. You'll need to be trained and qualified in the same kind of elements as what's required for assessing new homes. And the great thing is that it creates an opportunity to work for yourself. You can run your own small business, you can work from home, and you can also have that sort of flexibility in what you do. So we're seeing already a lot of people that are changing careers, and what they're wanting is the kind of work for themselves, flexibility in what they work. They're giving up the sort of the career in the 9 to 5 for more flexibility and so on.
That sounds really good. And how many assessors are out there in the market right now? And for that to project, with all the new homes now getting sold, needing this as well, what is there a shortage right now? Or?
Like any new schemes, obviously most of the work has been in the assessment of new dwellings, and there's just shy of 1,000 people in the country that kind of do that work. But when you do the maths, there's going to be a need for a substantial number of people in that field. And people that have been doing assessments under the residential scorecard scheme, it's been around for a few years. Yes, it's been an optional thing. There's about 400 people in the country that do that. But once again, do the maths, right? 15.8 divided by 1,000 or by 400, but you can kind of see the number. And so obviously as these things are announced and launched, there'll be more people coming into those industries. But I think that the upside there is significant. And like all of these things, the requirements for energy efficiency and thermal performance, they're not going backwards, right? They may stay the same for a little while. The next iteration of the building codes, there'll be changes to that. And a lot of this is driven by, underpinning government policy at the federal level.
Yes.
But also, even if you kind of look at, the average homeowner, they may not care about government policy. What they care about is a lower power bill. And with cost of living issues, what we're seeing more interested in is how do I reduce my energy bill? How do I not end up with thousands of dollars every quarter in my electricity bill? So, as I say, the demand is there, and we're seeing a lot of people changing careers. They're, just some of the students we've enrolled over the last little while, we've had people that are leaving law, they were teachers, they were working in admin. We had people that were IT programmers. We've had people that have come from all different backgrounds. They're not all architects. They're not all building designers or builders. They're coming from a real range of backgrounds, and they come into the course, and that's something they want to do. It's part of their kind of career change journey.
That's really interesting. And when they do the course, what they learn, what they're going to be learning, what they're expected to do in the course?
The government regulates and approves the training package for the qualification with input from industry. And throughout the qualification, there's a range of what I call underpinning areas. So you cover things like risk management, safety in other people's properties. You do things like, the professional ethics and those sorts of underpinning aspects. The course that we offer, the qualification we offer, caters for both people that want to do the new home assessments as well as the existing home assessments. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds. It gives you the opportunity to kind of be qualified to be able to do either of those things. So for those on the existing homes, that covers a whole range of aspects like understanding building materials, understanding the way that heat moves in a building. The biggest energy use in our buildings are heating and cooling. So how do we provide recommendations to designers using the software that we're using to improve their design to ultimately reduce the energy bill through better design? So there's a lot of those sorts of things. For those that are working in the new home space, it's the same kind of aspects, but as we get towards the end of the course, we go through the technical regulations that are required to be applied to NATO's assessments. We go through an extensive, in fact, the most extensive training program in the industry in the software. And at the end of the day, you, as an assessor for new homes, you spend almost all of your day using the software to assess drawings and planned buildings. And so being able to use the software and also be confident that you can model and assess the most complex of buildings, we take you through all of that, and so that when you're finished, not only do you graduate with a qualification, but you can become accredited straight away and you can hit the ground running as a confident professional in the industry. Okay,
great. And is that all done online, in person, or hybrid, or?
Yeah, so the way it works is that all of the sort of underpinning knowledge aspects is all provided through our online learning portal. And so whilst it's largely self-paced, what we do is it's done in a structured way. So typically we find people take 12 to 18 months to complete, although you can do it more quickly than that. And so what we do is we require you to complete at least one unit a month, acknowledging the fact that people are busy, they have lives, they're working, and all of those things. And so one unit a month, and then it takes a number of months to kind of really master the detail for those most complex buildings using the software. And so that then allows you to complete in that 18-month time frame. So that said, there's videos and a whole pile of recorded content, there's written materials, and then all the assessments you can do basically through our portal. There's obviously things like underpinning knowledge quizzes and so on to test your knowledge, but also we have a whole range of different practical assessments as well. So, you need to be able to go and assess a building, and existing buildings. So we start with people assessing their own home, and so they can, understand how things work in their own home, and hopefully make some improvements as well, which helps them to save some money and reduce their energy bills through the process, but also getting used to going to other people's homes and doing the same kind of thing, which is what you do assessing existing homes. For the new homes, as I say, there's training in the use of the software, training in the use and understanding the technical regulations that you need to apply. And then we provide a number of different standard buildings that we've worked with the national NATO's administrator, sort of the overarching regulatory body, to create those drawings. And so they're endorsed and approved by industry, and they contain all the things that are required for you to do as an assessor to demonstrate. So we do that. And so through that process, obviously there's feedback provided, particularly with the software. There's one-on-one sessions with Australia's leading expert in software training in these tools. Is the only person in the country that's accredited in the 4 industry tools, and he's been involved with providing support, assisting developers and providing input into the development of some of this software. He undertakes mentoring and quality reviews of work of others in his industry, so, and part of the technical advisory body. So particularly in that space, the training that you get is the best available in the country.
Great. And now, like you talk about assessments and stuff like that, does that mean that when we get to the assessment stage, it's like a pass or fail, or what happens if I do fail, or what happens then?
Yeah, so the way it works is that you submit your assessment. Okay, so could be complete the quiz, or could be providing completing your other assessments, and we review that. And if all is great, then fantastic, well done. But sometimes we don't quite get it right the first time, and that's okay. So we provide feedback, and then you can address any issues in your assessment based upon that feedback, and then you can resubmit. Right. So for the vast majority of people, most people don't need any second submission. Some people need one.
Yep. What
we find, particularly once you move to the software towards the end, the really critical part is that kind of interaction. We have Q&A sessions. We have with groups of people. We have one-on-one sessions with sort of Australia's leading industry mentor in this space. And through that written feedback as well, it helps you to not only, understand what brightens the piece in the software, right? Anyone can learn that. That's pretty easy. But it's all about understanding what's on the drawings, understanding how the actual software truly works, and also making sure that you can apply all the technical regulations that you get audited and checked on, so you understand all of that and you can do it all right. So when you step out into industry, you basically have everything you need to be successful.
Great. Sounds like it's not as hard as doing our year 12 English or maths or something. At least you get second chances.
Yeah, that's it. And the idea is that it is an assessment. You do need to demonstrate competency, so that's what it's all about. There's no exams, so it's not like a university where you've got to kind of sit and pass an exam. So we have some quizzes, we have a range of different practical tasks that all aligns back to the nationally recognised qualification. And basically, that's how it works. It's reasonably straightforward. And the reality is that people are coming into this qualification from a range of different backgrounds with a range of different experience. And some people, find that, we've done a bit of this stuff before, and that's great. Other people find that, that's all new to me, but I've got experience over here. And so people bring different experiences and backgrounds to the course, which is fantastic.
Great. Now, for those who's new into the industry or never organise one of these assessors, when you do a new home, or just say if you do a existing home sale per job, like when you do assessment, how much do they typically charge for something like that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, because typically what you find is that there's a number of different variables involved. One variable is how complex or large the home is. And so we see, obviously, in those instances, there's more higher charges there than it would be in a smaller place. What we also find is that if you are working with a designer for an entire apartment block of 100 apartments, then obviously you're doing 100 apartments, and and so the cost per assessment is probably going to be lower there because there's 100 of them rather than one here and one there. And so there is a few different, factors involved there. That said, we did some industry research a number of years ago, and I think it was 2 years ago now. And what we did was we actually asked assessors in the industry, here's 3 different types of buildings. What would you charge for each of them, right? And so it's not like a hypothetical question where, what's your answer to this kind of, thing that's variable? We said, okay, here's some plans, here's some drawings, here's an actual building. What would you charge for that? Right, and so what we found was that like everything else, there's a range of pricing. But that said, what we also identified is that in the building sector, typically people working as labourers will be charging $80 to $100 an hour, right, as a labourer. Right, and so we're working with professionals, and the charge rates need to really should be in the vicinity of maybe building designer and architect, or maybe even engineer. And so the common rates that people are charging is somewhere in the vicinity of $150 to $300 an hour for the work they do. That's not necessarily what people are paid if they're doing work for those firms, but that's the charge rate that assessors are commonly charging.
That's pretty good there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. I think final question, I know we touched base on this earlier, how we're different to some of the, I know we're one of the market leaders, we work with a lot of governments and industries. Why else would people should decide to choose Transform over some other competitors to do this course?
I guess, people have got a choice of completing the course at a couple of places, right? That's great. But certainly what we do is our aim is to make you industry ready. And so we're providing, as I say, around 30 hours of software training. That's live software training where you get the ability to ask questions. You have one-on-one sessions with industry experts. And the people that are training you they're not just kind of people that did it, 20 years ago. These are people that are involved with writing policy. They're involved with providing technical advice around the regulations. They're involved with mentoring. They're involved with undertaking industry quality assurance reviews. So these are the sort of the industry experts, right? So they're the sorts of people that are involved. Particularly with the software training, what we've found over the years is that you really need to bring together three elements, and it's, as I say, it's using the software itself, and as I say, the using part is not overly difficult, but it's making sure you get all the correct information from the drawings, understand how to apply the technical regulations that your work will be, basically audited on, right? And so if you get that wrong in an audit, then your accreditation could be suspended, right? So you've got to get that right. It's got to be absolutely 100%, right? So there are no shortcuts there. You really need to fully understand it and how to apply it. So there's those, but also you've got to understand how the software works, right? For this particular industry, it's about understanding the underlying Cheneth engine and how heat moves in a building and how the software actually does all of the work. And it takes some time to do that. And so different organisations have got different approaches. Some organisations don't provide any training in this at all, and you're left to your own device to just try and figure all of that out. Now, for me, I wouldn't risk it because, if your work is going to be audited and your accreditation, your ability to work is potentially on the line, why would you go down that path, right? Doesn't make any sense. Likewise, different organisations also do pre-recorded videos, and, that might be kind of great because you can kind of sit there and watch a video on an iPad, but you can't ask a question, you can't get a question answered. And the thing about videos is that each year the software gets updated many times. The technical regulations in the last year have changed at least twice. And so the videos are never up to date because they can't be. Things are changing. So live software really is the only way to learn this. It's the only way you fully understand how to do what you do. And if you've got questions along the way, you can ask the questions and get them answered pretty much straight away. And so to me, what we're trying to do is create the absolute rock stars in the industry. We're trying to create assessors that can hit the ground running. They're confident, not at risk of having their accreditation suspended, once they're finished, right? So that's what we're really trying to do, and that's why people should train with us.
Great. Thank you very much for your time, Michael. Now, for those who are interested, how can they get in contact with you or with Transform?
Yeah, so have a look at our website, transform.com.au. So there's information there about that. You can find us on LinkedIn or on Facebook and social media. One thing is also worth having a look, if you do have a look at our website, we also have a blog, and a lot of the types of questions and things we've been discussing today, there's more detail on our blog, and so feel free to have a look there as well.